Hey everyone, Dr. Kem here, and welcome back to the Laboratory of Data. I am absolutely thrilled you're joining me for this explainer. Today, we're throwing on our lab coats and unlocking the real secrets of statistics. We are going to take a journey from utter numerical chaos to crystal clear clarity, diving deep into data distribution and frequency tables.
So picture this for a second. You've just wrapped up a massive survey, and right there on your desk sits a staggering pile of hundreds, maybe even thousands of raw data points. It's just a chaotic sea of disorganized numbers, literally a mere list that doesn't actually tell you anything yet. How exactly do researchers take that overwhelming mountain of raw data and transform it into clear, actionable insights? Well, here is our scientific syllabus for today. First, taming raw data. 2, the frequency distribution table. 3, grouping data for clarity. 4, relative frequency and percentages. 5, the cumulative snowball effect. And 6, visualizing with the ogive. All right, let's jump right into section 1, taming raw data. Our absolute first step in this protocol is to understand exactly what we're trying to achieve here. We have to tame the beast. When you collect data, your first job as a researcher is to organize and simplify it. That's the entire goal of descriptive statistical techniques. You want to get a nice general overview of your results. A frequency distribution essentially presents an organized picture of the entire set of scores. It shows you exactly where each individual observation lands relative to all the others. Now, the really crucial point here is understanding the word frequency itself. In statistics, absolute frequency simply means the number of times a specific observation pops up in your study. Think about your own heartbeat. A normal, healthy heartbeat occurs at a frequency of, say, 72 beats per minute. In data, frequency is just counting how often a specific value shows up. It's really that simple. Moving on to section 2, the frequency distribution table. Now that we've got frequency nailed down, it's time to pull out our go-to laboratory tool for organizing this info. A standard frequency distribution table is, honestly, beautifully simple. It consists of at least 2 columns. Your first column, which we label X, lists the categories on your scale of measurement. You want to list these sequentially from highest to lowest without skipping any. Then, your second column is labeled F for frequency. That's where you tally up how often each X value actually occurs in your dataset. Let's see this in action with a really quick sample table of preferred room temperatures. In our X column, we've got the temperatures, 72, 71, and 70 degrees. In our frequency column, we can see that 6 people preferred 72 degrees, 1 person preferred 71, and 3 preferred 70. Now pay attention to that bottom row. The sum of all your frequencies must perfectly equal n, which is your total number of observations. So here, 6 plus 1 plus 3 gives us our total of 10. Next up, section 3, grouping data for clarity. Now, you might be wondering, Dr. Kem, what happens when our dataset is just way too massive? What if our variables stretch across a huge range of values? I mean, if you have 500 different test scores ranging from 0 to 100, a regular table listing every single possible score would be ridiculous. It'd be way too long. That's ungrouped data for you, totally unsummarized and a massive time sink to read. To fix this, we convert it into grouped data. We bundle the data together into distinct classes or intervals, condensing all that chaos into a summarized form that is instantly ready for analysis. In a grouped table, your X column no longer lists individual values. Instead, it lists groups of scores, which we call class intervals. And the golden rule here? These intervals all must have the exact same uniform width. Usually, researchers pick a nice simple number like 2, 5, or 10. The ultimate goal is to pick an interval width that leaves your final table with somewhere around 10 intervals total. That really is the perfect sweet spot for readability. So let's walk through how this builds into a reliable lab protocol. To form these classes, step 1, ascertain the range of your data, basically the maximum minus the minimum. Step 2, decide to aim for about 5 to 10 total classes. Step 3, divide your range by that number to find your interval size. Step 4, set up your actual class limits. And finally, step 5, go through your raw data and tally the observations into their new bundled homes. Moving right along to section 4. Relative frequency and percentages. Okay, so we've got our raw counts organized, which is great. But honestly, counts alone kind of lack context. It's time to weigh our data by bringing in relative frequency and percentages. Knowing that 3 people chose 70 degrees is cool, but out of how many? 1,000,000, 10? That's where proportions step in. You add a third column for proportion labeled P. You calculate that by simply dividing the frequency by the total number of observations, n. Then you add a fourth column for percentage, which is literally just multiplying that proportion by 100. Here's how it all comes together in practice. If group A has a frequency of 3 out of a total of 10, the proportion is 0.3. Multiply by 100, and boom, you have 30%. Now look at that bottom row again. This is your built-in safety check, guys. All your proportions absolutely must sum to 1.00, and your percentages must perfectly sum to 100%. If they don't, well, you need to head back to the drawing board. Let's roll right into section 5, the cumulative snowball effect. This is where we add a really cool layer of insight to our table by tracking a running total. Cumulative frequency basically just tells us the number of data points that are less than or equal to a specific value. Imagine a snowball rolling down a hill. As it rolls, it collects more and more snow, growing bigger with every single turn. Or think of it like playing a video game. If you score 10 points in round 1 and 15 in round 2, your cumulative total is 25. You are just continuously adding as you go. Check out this zigzag addition process on our table. For the 0 to 10 range, our frequency is 3, so our cumulative is also 3. For the next row, we take that 3, add the new frequency of 5, and we get 8. Then 8 plus 7 gives us 15, and 15 plus 5 gives us 20. Just like our earlier safety check, that very last number in your cumulative column, in this case 20, must exactly match your total sample size.
And finally, section 6, visualizing with the ogive.
Okay, this is absolutely my favorite part of the explainer. We have our perfectly structured table, but let's be real. Tables can be a bit dry to look at. So let's visualize this geographically. The ogive is a specific type of graph used exclusively for cumulative frequency. To set this up in the lab, you plot the cumulative frequency on the vertical y-axis. But on the horizontal x-axis, you must plot the upper class boundaries of your group data. We always use the upper end of the group range because you're mapping all the accumulated data up to that specific maximum point. So what's the big takeaway here? The ogive visually represents your running total. Because you are constantly adding values, the line literally never goes down. It forms this characteristic rising S-shape. But here is its absolute superpower. You can use it to instantly estimate the median. Think about it. If you have 20 students, the median is the 10th student. Just find 10 on the y-axis, draw a line over to your S-curve, and drop straight down to the x-axis to find your median score. No complex formulas required. It's brilliant. And just like that, we have transformed raw, chaotic numbers into clear, actionable, visual insights. Now that you've mastered frequency, grouped data, and the mighty ogive, my question to you is this: what hidden stories are waiting to be uncovered in the data around you today? Grab your lab coat, go out there, and find out. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the data.